honored this morning to be able to interview Mr. Baxley Tankard of Franktown, Virginia. He is very well known in our community for his integrity and his wisdom and his patience and his many contributions to our community. And today we are going to talk a little bit about his experience here on the eastern shore of Virginia for a very full lifetime. We are located today at his office on the Courthouse Green in Eastville, Virginia. Baxley, it's a pleasure to have you here. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Harry.
I thought,
make yourself at home.
I thought perhaps we could start with some of your childhood memories of growing up in Franktown, what the town was like, and also perhaps some of your memories of being on the water on Warehouse Creek and out on Nassawadox Creek as you were growing up.
Harry, they were very pleasant days. I picture it now as being a very nice place to have grown up, and I have memories that have meant much to me. I was not born in the village of Franktown. I was born out on the farm where I now reside. I left the farm and moved to Franktown when I was about 5 years old and lived there until about 1960. In Franktown as a boy, I remember we had 3 grocery stores and a pharmacy store. The pharmacist was run by a man named Dr. Peter F. Scott, who died at the age of 98, I believe. Dr. Scott had 5 wives, all of whom he outlived. He has 4 of them buried right in Franktown, right back of the site where his store was today, and a little railed-in enclosure that probably is not getting the attention it deserves. School was up at the Frank-Nassawadox High School, as they called it. It was about 3/4 of a mile from home. Frequently used to ride my pony to school. I had stables at the school where students and teachers and so forth could stable their horses when they were riding there, driving there. I do not remember any extensive use was made of the stables, but I do remember a right substantial line of stables that was there. However, when I was first student, the Arnold family, with whom I'm assuming you're well acquainted down on Nassawadox Creek,
Yes.
used to drive horse and buggies to school, and I remember stabling their horse right next to where I'd stable my pony when I'd ride pony school. Baseball was a big deal then on the shore. We had 6 high schools in the county at that time, and they all had a baseball team, and we'd get home game, away game with each one of them during the season, and that would draw a large attendance. Franktown had two large grandstands sections, one behind home plate and another one down first baseline. We had ball players that sort of made a name for themselves, and I can remember at least one of them went on to the big leagues.
Really?
Reggie Mapp. Funny thing, I was at a Mapp wedding about 40 years ago, I guess. And a boy came up to me and asked me if I knew anything about the Mapps. And he was looking for a man named Reggie Mapp. Well, I told him I knew all about him. Well, he said, I was playing baseball for UVA, and Reg was pitching for VPI. And he struck me out 4 times that day. And Virginia beat us 1-0. And I've been cussing him for 50 years for that. Well, he said I met him about a couple of years ago at some country club somewhere, and at the bar we made up, we're best of friends now. Well, that's just a little estimate of what can happen in some of your baseball memories. Slim Churn, who was well known, was an Eastville man. That he went to the big leagues too, and it was always was a battle between the high schools, with Churn and Mapp. Got posing each other on the mounds. Webb's Island produced 2 well-known ball players.
Really?
Jack Webb and Dick Webb. One was pitching, one was catcher on the Eastville team. And they made quite a name for themselves. Wow. That's what high school was like. We graduated a class, I think, of 21 when I graduated way back many years ago. That was a school basically that served the general area all the way down to Alconk, came out to Franktown, Nassawadox High School. Had a boy, student, a senior, I guess it was to drive a bus from Alconk out to the school and back. That was what school life was like. Franktown was a thriving town until the railroad hit Nassawadox in 1884, I guess it was. There was no Nassawadox till then. There was a Franktown sort of got left out in a lot of things from years shortly after that. Next thing, a big thing that hit Franktown was the relocating of Route 13 from the old stagecoach route, which is now the Bayside Road, to the railroad right away, where it now follows and branched off at Machipunga or Shadyside, following the old route, going the new route. It was quite a controversy between Franktown and Nassawadox, where they're going to build a road. And at that time, Franktown had a representative in the legislature, John E. Ningham, who later became Judge Ningham, and they thought his connection with the legislature might be able to swing it, keep it where it was, but it didn't work out. The highway department said it had to go up, follow the railroad course. There was a proper course to run it, and that's why it was finally built in 1928.
Mm-hmm.
Well, up to that time, I had a regular bus ride running through Franktown every morning, 8 o'clock. You'd see the bus running, coming from Cape Charles and going on to Salisbury and come back in the afternoon and so forth. Well, that was the end of the bus ride in Franktown when they moved railroad, moved the highway.
Mm-hmm.
Things worked along in that route. The road system used to be a dirt road system coming through Franktown, and it was just the old Seaside Road, and the Bayside Road was, and the crossroads I called everything else. It was all worked by the county, maintaining the roads. Each Matchstill district had our own road department, group, or whatever. And the Franktown district road had a barn for horses and mules and so forth up at Hadlock. And about once every 2 weeks, you'd see the road scrapers coming through, scraping the dirt road up for the Franktown district operators. A hill coming up in Franktown from the so-called Franktown branch was sand and clay road.
Mm-hmm. And
if you had an automobile would pull that hill in high gear, you had a good car. if you couldn't make it in high gear, your car was no good. That was the test. It was very, very interesting how it did happen. Well, in I guess 1933, when the Governor Byrd created the State Highway Department and gave all the counties in the state opportunity to close down their own county system and let the state take them over. And I've been told that was only 2 counties in the state that refused that invitation.
Mm-hmm.
Arlington and Fairfax, I believe they were very large counties and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great improvement in the highway system because at that time they started servicing roads and so forth, and they progressed up to the system you see today. The life on Nassawadox Creek was something that my first real remembrance of it was ice skating up on what was called Wallace's Pond, which is simply up ahead of Warehouse Creek is where it is. And it seemed like the weather was much colder then than now because you got a lot of skating days during the course of the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And you would see groups of not unusual to see many 50 people on the ice at the time. Had one man, Harrison Elliott. Everybody knew Harrison Elliott. He claimed to be and was the champion skater. He was going to do all the fancy dips and dives and everything you could do skating. And he had his sharp way. He kept his skates just as sharp as a razor, and sharpened everybody else's, I guess, too. Well, from there you went to the smaller boats, and I remember try to build an old boat of my own, and I put something together and got her down to the creek, and I think she died right there in a pretty short order. Well, I had what they call it, a chicken skiff, I guess. No, a Tangier skiff.
Okay.
First sailboat I was involved with. George Badge and I bought this old boat for $19.50, and the woman said, if you want the anchor to go along with you can get it for $22. So we took the big package and brought the anchor along, and we sailed that for 2 or 3 years on the creek, and had a great fun with it. A boat finally came World War II, and I got ready to go in service, and I put her in somebody's hands to take care of her while I was gone. He could use her and so forth. Well, I never saw the boat again after that. I don't know what happened to her. But in the early motorboat days on the creek, there were no outboards. It was before the outboard day. And there was one that somebody tried to piece together, pointing me up and down, but he never got it to successfully perform. I don't know where he got the old framework from, but there were about 6 motorboats that I can remember. Oh, we had one that kept down right down at the dock, down near your site right now on the creek, the up creek side. Had a boat that, well, had one that as a forerunner to that. I still working through a man that down the Oyster. I bought an old boat, and I had a motor in it, and carried it home and tried to get her going, and stayed up, worked on her all the winter, and came spring, wanted to get it going. Now we could get the motor to work, and the boat, we could stop her from leaking. So Dad decided he had better do better than that, so he bought a boat then that a man named Dave Dunton, was quite a name for boat building, built her to run his crew backwards and forwards to Hog Island, where he was building a Coast Guard station over there. When he got through building the Coast Guard station, Dad bought the boat from him, but it had an old Buick motor in it, and that was getting rusted out and so forth, and I had to do something about another motor, so he bought a little Marina motor, a little four-cycle, one single-cylinder four-cycle motor, and we used that boat from right many years, starting out when I was a high school kid, and right on till I guess, till I went the war in 1992. She would, in spring, we'd leave Warehouse Creek, go on a cruise to Bryansville, Willis Wharf, or whatever our destination was, for spring fishing. Get to run of the spring trout fishing on the seaside, and wanted to go over there. We'd leave home early in the morning. Had to go on high tide, so you get over the flats down at the Fisherman's Island area, where there's no inland waterway then, so forth. If we had a man named Captain Johnny Roberts that knew the Bayside and the seaside and all the waters, he was captain. He was going to make a trip. He'd carry you right on through the seaside, the guts and little streams that he knew, the shortcuts and so forth. And we'd make a run in probably 8 hours, then a round trip run with the boat, and stay over there for a month, then bring her back home for summertime. Well, Nassawadox Creek was had a wonderful point down next to the bay that no longer exists. It's been washed away, but you could dive right off the bank of Sand Point into deep water.
Is that on the north side?
On the north side.
Mm-hmm.
On the north side. That's the inside of the point.
Mm-hmm.
It has since been carried away with one of the big storms we had, I've been told. What finally happened to it? Well, a man named Rev Kilman owned it, and he liked to see boys down there and mess with them. He'd see as many as three tenths of boys camping out down there going for a couple of weeks, usually during August, I guess it was. Live on clams and fish and crabs or whatever you could get, mostly. Do your own cooking, and it was a great sporting time. The other boat owners, the Arnold boys had the Dixie Belle. Walkers at Bayford had the Randolph. These are all the names of the boats they had. Oh, Dickie Jacob up to Cat Harbor had another boat. Don't remember the name of his boat. And Masula Fox had his oyster boat he used to use had a new Palmer single cylinder water in it, but she was running smooth. She was a smooth running boat.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Fisheries Commission man that took care of all the license and so forth for Ormond, kept a little boat tied up right down at the dock on your point right now, and that's about all the motorboats that were on the creek.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, anybody you want to go boating was no trouble to recruit a group to go with you, because everybody didn't have a boat then like they do now.
Mm-hmm.
That was about what life was like on Franktown and on the Bayside, and didn't see too much of the seaside, so we'd go over fishing occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one big trip. I say a big trip. A group of us went to Hog Island once on somebody's boat and swam in the ocean. That was my first dip I guess I ever had in the ocean, and probably on the one of 2 or 3 trips I ever had to Hog Island.
Mm-hmm.
We were hit hard by the August 23rd of 33 storm. Franktown was, half the trees in the yard of Franktown were leveled at that time. The storm hit in the real early morning. Nobody didn't have any weather reports or anything then. If you want weather report, you got out to Farmer's Almanac, but they didn't tell you when these storms were coming. I remember that day the storm hit real early in the morning. I was waked up by this thunder and lightning, and I thought it was never going to end. What I remember it now, it went on, must have been for at least a couple of hours. Just severe, and the wind was intense, and of course, and that's what caused all the damage. Well, after the wind stopped blowing, the storm, you went out to try to look around, and you got all kind of reports about damage was done, and you'd see it. I remember going to Willis Wharf, and you'd see sizable boats, halfway from where they usually belonged up to where the church on the corner is now. They'd be up in this field halfway up there. Mm-hmm. One story that always caught my attention. Had a man on one of these oyster watch houses they used to have. All the big planters had to watch the oyster ground for the people like to visit too often, and would put them out of business if they didn't keep it patrolled. Well, this was a man named, I believe his name was Buck Lyon. He was a watchman out on one of those watch houses, and the wind and the storm and the water and sea soon collapsed the house he was living in, a little shack, as what it meant to on Powell. But he grabbed the roof as he went by, which came out all in a sort of a flat slate, and he said he grabbed the roof and he went and pulled two big holes in the shingles and stuck his legs through them and rode that roof all the way to the shore.
Oh, gosh.
Came ashore somewhere down, I don't know where, somewhere on the eastern shore. Well, that's just a sample of what was going on those days during that storm. And it took a long time to get the shore cleaned up. And everybody went to work clearing their yards and so forth. And just by coincidence, I remember exactly a week later, 4 boys, two brothers, and Phil and Jim and John, and Cut Roberts, I guess, who was the banker's son, and John Holland, who worked at Northampton Lumber Company. We all took off for Chicago World Fair, driving the old A-model Ford, 5 of us in it, and all the kit baggage, whatever we had. I don't know how we had it. And came back through Detroit and up in the Canada side and back to Niagara Falls, and that was a trip of a lifetime. Wow. But that's what life was like on the shore in those days. So that's sort of a thumbnail description of what it meant to me.
Well, actually, I have one question. That was around the time of the Great Depression, before you went to college, and perhaps after you were in college. How did that affect the Eastern Shore? How did the Eastern Shore handle the Depression?
Well, it hit the shore right severely. To give you an example of what we were like on the Franktown farm where I was living, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 so-called tenement houses on that farm, and it was 4 different families, and some of them were sizable families, and my father tried to help them along any way he could by give them a little day's work here and a day's work there, and the rate of pay was $1 a day. I remember that much well.
Wow.
Schools kept operating. There's no there. I don't remember the gas price exploding like it's doing now, anything like that. I can remember buying gas, 5 gallons for $1 at a very short period of time during those days. Nobody lived a life of luxury. Everybody sort of seemed to draw in, providing all the help they could. They had all the farmers had their own milk supply, cattle. They had their own fowl, raise lots of own chickens and turkeys and ducks, and that was and then of course the pork, raised all of that. So that, and they would. It was a big help then getting, cutting, providing for the families.
Mm-hmm.
Mama used to carry corn to a grist mill to get it ground for the chicken, get meal for making for their own home use, things like that. That was some of the ways that they met the Depression. Now, some of the banks didn't do so well.
Mm-hmm.
Frank-Nassawadox was taken over by closed, of course, was taken over by the FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, to liquidate it.
Mm-hmm.
They sent a man to the county and spent in 2 or 3 years, I remember him trying liquidating the bank, and he was upgrading some of the properties to make them more attractive to resell, and how it came out. And soon after that, the same group that ran the old bank organized a new bank, and that grew on right on up to the same beginning point as a bank is in Nassawadox today.
Mm-hmm.
The banks all closed then for a bank holiday, and I was in college at that time. They shut down the banks, and everybody, of course, everybody else's bank was shut down too. So, but students, they kept on feeding us and kept on teaching us. So I remember I would write home and tell Dad I need some money for such and such, to buy a book or something, and he tells me that he goes up to the bank at Exmoor, Old People's Trust Bank, which survived the Depression, never had to close its. Never have closed down except the bank holiday about 3 or 4 days that the president declared for all banks in the nation, to then clear this big float of money was check back. No good checks, I guess, were going all over the nation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dad would say, I've been up to see Ed Bryan, he was the cashier there. He was telling me, he said, just tell him to check that it come through here. We'll gladly pay it. That we were in business. We never had to close our doors, and but we'd get hung up in the clearinghouse some kind of way, and they wouldn't go through there, and still finally the thing cleared up. But as a student in college, it didn't fare too poorly as far as the Depression was concerned. I guess that was going on pretty tight on the families back home, is the way that worked out, I suppose. That's about what life was like from then. Summertime in your college days, high school days, I wasn't a kid on the shore that didn't have a job working on a farm if we didn't get one anyway else. So we usually working for the parents or the neighbors or something. But it was always a time that they needed extra help in the summertime. They didn't have all these Mexicans and so forth like they have now. Now coming in, they would get crews of laboring people for harvesting potatoes from city of Baltimore, from city of Norfolk. They'd have a crew leader that would go over and pick them up and bring them over here, and the farmers would house them on their own farm, and that's just for their use in the crops. I can remember when Webster opened his canning factory at Sheridan. My father grew a crop of tomatoes on acreage of tomatoes. Not anything like what the acreage they have now, but he probably had 10 or 15 acres of tomatoes. Go to Webster at Sheridan under some kind of contract that they had. Well, we picked them in wooden crates that we'd load them on a wagon drawn by two mules, haul them to Nassawadox, put them in a slatted cattle car there, and they went by railroad to Sheridan to Webster's factory. Of course, that didn't go along very long before the trucks moved in, and but that was right in the early days of Webster factory in Sheridan.
Mm-hmm.
Strawberries was a big crop for our local farmers. Every farmer had his strawberries to harvest in the early spring. That would sort of give them a little money to help them along. So farmers would vary from half-acre strawberries for commercial use up to 5 acres, maybe nothing like that. But that's all been taken over by the imported berries we get from California, Mexico, or wherever we get them from. But they're obviously not the same berries we were getting then, because the taste of them is entirely different. Yeah.
Well, Baxley, you went on to Randolph-Macon College, and then to UVA.
Correct.
Did you go to UVA right after college?
Yeah. My brother John and I, only 14 and a half months apart in our age, we graduated in the same high school class, same college class, same law school class. I came back to the shore and opened an outlived office in Nassawadox, and he went to work in Washington. He spent the summer here sort of looking around, finding what he could do, and finally one day he got a call from Washington to come up for an interview. He went up and I went to work for the Maritime Administration on a one-year special job, and stayed 30 years till he retired as, I believe, Assistant General Counsel for the Maritime Administration. He was obviously much smarter than I to leave home where he get a job for early practice of law on the Eastern Shore for a young lawyer that just hung up his shingle. Was right tight going. I had to live at home. If I hadn't lived at home, I'd never made it. I can remember being appointed some of these cases that involved serious crimes. One of them is, if he didn't get paid $10 by the county for a murder case, things like that. That's why you got your start. Well, you know how you couldn't do much on that, and good thing I didn't have a wife then, because somebody would have gone hungry. That's about what it was like then.
Was that 1938 when you opened your office?
1938. Now, at that time, well, I went to the war in '42 and got back home at Christmas of '46. Went war on July the 4th of '42 and got back home Christmas of '46. Well, Navy was good to me. Of course, the draft was getting everybody then in that time. Draft board had a list. You came on, your number came up. You didn't have much choosing you could do. You took what came. Well, that spring, '42, Mama draft board came by my office one day and said, if you don't want to get drafted, I suggest you might want to go see if you can get some other job with one of the armed forces. Well, I took his suggestion, and 3 months later, I guess, I was in the Navy. But I got commissioned as a JG and stayed in the Navy for 4.5 years, and got discharged as a commander, and that was really the first time I'd made any money to speak of was during the military pay since I got out of law school. Well, in the meantime, rural electrification was very much sought out by all the areas of the state that were not electrified. You may remember that was one of Mr. Roosevelt's programs was to electrify first electricity all over the whole United States, and we had a county agent at that time, Johnny Ed Tankard, who was Johnny and David's father. Used to go up to Blacksburg every summer for some kind of group meeting they'd have, some of these programs. They would educating the county agents on what was good for carry back home for the areas to give them a chance to do about a job for the people they were working for. Well, anyway, Johnny Ed came back home that summer. Just been schooled on rural electrification, what was available and what could be done and so forth. And he knew I was a young lawyer, and stopped by my office one day and said, I understand we got to employ our lawyers. One of the first things we got to do, and we got to want to know if I'd be interested. And of course I told him, said I had no idea what kind of work I have to do. Said it'd probably be some little right-of-way problems you might have to work on. So I told him I'd be happy to. Well, he said we had a group of meeting in the courthouse tomorrow night, try to educate the public a little bit about what it's all about. And they said, come on down. and I let you see what you can find out. Well, of course, I was down, and at that time they set up a committee from this county and a county from Accomack County. About 9, I believe, 4 down here and 5 in Accomack, and they then soon the committee got working, and the committee was the one had to employ a lawyer, and I happened to get picked over one boy from Accomack, and I don't know why, but I did, and I went to work, and I spent 65 years as working for him, I guess, up for the time I was in the Navy, and it was most gratifying and nice work to see, be a part of. For at that time in Northampton County, there was no electricity in Arconneck, so we done all the way down there, had no electricity. Wellington had no electricity anywhere down there. Ayers Neck, one side of it was lighted up and the other side was not, going down all the way down to Bayford. I think that was probably because one of the supervisors of the county lived down there, and he put all his efforts into getting electricity, to get the public service company to come down there and give them electricity. Anyway, that's how they got one side of the neck lighted up. As Church Neck had no electricity. Bridgetown, no electricity. Next one all the way down, everyone in next, no electricity. So that was right ground that we were concentrating on to get them electricity. And you got all kind of answers from some people when they wanted. I remember one of them was had a real nice old home about way down on the water somewhere, and to get electricity, you had to sign an application and put up a membership fee of $5. Now, the membership fee was just to get a little cash that could operate on till it got going. Well, this man said he wanted electricity, but he'd no way in the world can I believe if I can get electricity for $5, and I'm not going to risk my $5 on this, because nobody's going to give me electricity for $5. Well, finally convinced him, putting up to $5, and he says, well, if that's all I can possibly lose, I'm going to take that chance. Well, the other one was a merchant in Bridgetown. He was very much interested in that area. He was one of our committee men at a public service company. They'd been trying to get electricity down there for years. The public service company would keep telling them, no way in the world we can run our lines down here. Just can't afford to do that. You break us if we had to do that. Well, anyway, when it got apparent that they're probably going to get rural electrification down there, public service went back to him and said, we finally figured out how we can stretch our lines down to Bridgetown and give you your electricity down here at your store and everybody around here, but that's all we can do. So what about all my friends in Church Neck? What are you going to do about them? He said, we're sorry. We wish we could take care of them, but no, we just can't do it. He just said, he just waited on. Said, you just keep going. I'm willing to wait see if we can't get all these people taken care of. Well, that was what he did. And when you got all these people signed up, you had to then spread them out on a map, spot them on maps where they all were. And the old standard was we had what we called a product from my REA, a pre-allotment advisor. Before you got your money for to build your alliance with, he was a man that would come see us every 2 or 3 weeks and urging us to work harder and get these people signed up. And you had to have an average of 3 to a mile, and we'll build lines to them wherever they are. Anyway, we finally got, after 6 months of hard soliciting, we got all our application together. We had enough so that they averaged out on the miles we figured we needed there. We had an average of 3 to the mile, and that could let us pick up a man like the one that didn't want to put up his $5, get him on this too. We got all that application in, and we sent it up to Washington. I carried it up there, whatever. And I didn't hear anything from it, didn't hear anything about it. So we got an appointment with Senator Bland, S.O. Bland, who was not Senator, but Representative S.O. Bland, who represented the 1st District, and he had been a good friend to the Eastern Shore. And he got his appointment with the head of the REA program, a man named Slattery. I remember it well. Committee of about 6 of us went up there. Had a appointment with the administrator of REA, Mr. Slattery, and Mr. Bland went with us. And the pre-allotment advisor we had, he went with us, a man named Walter Carpenter. I'll never forget his name, And we went in there and I told our administrator that we've had our application up here and we want some action on it. And we think it's been here, sitting here a little longer than we were comfortable with, and what to do about it. Well, obviously, Mr. Slattery looked over to Mr. Carpenter and said, "Is this a feasible project?" And Mr. Carpenter said to him, "Yes, it is. It meets all of our standards." Well, Mr. Slattery told us right from his desk, said, "Within 5 days, you'll get a notice from us that we're going to approve your application for, I don't know, about $500,000, I think, was the figure. So we was going to buy a Baxley Coal and Supply Company generating facility, which we had came on the market while we was doing our solicitation, and we had a option. We got an option on that for, and he had built the headlines going to up to Hollywood, where they had the old big canning factory, canned sweet potatoes, and they had another one going out to Nelsonia, I guess it was. Anyway, that was sort of the crux of the thing. So wasn't long before we got that, and we soon got our access to the funds, and we were in business then, operating a going generating plant that had at Parksley, and setting that to add to it and build more lines and build all these, satisfy all these necks. And the first day we bought them out, we went and then Electric Cooperative had established its office in an old grading shed, potato grading shed, and on Parksley Railroad side, and it belonged to one of the members of the then board of directors. Those committees had set up were elected as a board of directors, and by then, and after they got all the big business items over with, acquiring the property and putting mortgages on and everything else and so forth, that's when they started turning members in. They just kept it to a small core till it got to be an operating facility, and then they started members, and of course everybody wanted electricity as soon as they get it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here came the war, and that shut down all the copper wire you could get. So we had they had poles on hands and so forth. The contractor did. He set his poles, and then, well, the war as it progressed, they'd get some copper wire released from and smaller lots that would build a little section here and add to it and add to it. And finally, they got out, and after the war was over.
Actually, what the people who lived down on the necks
Yeah.
before REA, what were they doing? Kerosene, candles, generators?
Most of them was kerosene was part of them, was a big part of them. They had, some of them had little generating plants of their own, which would have a great big block of 2 dozen old batteries all hooked in it together, and they'd generate every day, fill those batteries and run on it at night.
Okay.
Some of them had acetylene torches in the house that they were using for lights. All heat was either wood or coal. It was just about the sole source of heating.
Baxley, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how practice has changed over that period of time, comparing what it's like now with what it was when you started your practice.
Yes. Practicing law on the shore has been good to me. I have enjoyed it. I'm still fascinated by it, and at times, and other times you can get completely aggravated about it because things don't go to suit you. As I indicated earlier, I started with a little office in Nassawadox and stayed with that till for about 4 years. So that's when I left to go in the Navy, and came back from the Navy. I came to Eastville, and this was the first only office I've had in Eastville. I just had half of this building, which is what I'd call, I guess, the west side of the building. That small area with 2 rooms, and then later I changed from that side to this side, and had these 2 rooms for right many years, and then property came available. I bought the whole thing, and next remodel, give it a complete going over inside. Had to strip out all the walls and so forth and put them back. And Hiawatha White did a right nice refurbishing job, and I've been enjoying it very much. I was a solo practitioner for most of those years, but some 20 years ago, 20 few years ago, a guy had a boy that came to work with me one summer from Washington Lee Law School. He was an excellent lawyer. He had to go back for 1 year to finish his law work. I wonder if he'd come back work for me. I told him when he graduated, we'd see what's going on. I got a call from him one day saying that I just passed the bar exam, and want to know if you can I come back. I told him, come on back, we'd do some kind of job, some kind of agreement. And he got back as soon as he got out of school. He worked here till all of a sudden he had a tragic death in an automobile accident after about 4 years here. And of course that left me back solo practicing again. I thought nothing about taking on anybody else. I was getting along all right at that time. Robert Alva came by one day and said, are you looking for anybody else to go to work for you? I said, no, I'm not looking for a soul. I'm all right. Well, he said, there's a boy in the Army would like to get back to the shore, go to work. Name of Croxton Garden. He said, would you like to, he said he worked last summer up at Commonwealth Attorney's Office in Accomack. But I don't know, didn't remember him as that way, and he told me a little bit about him. He said, would you give him an interview if he came to see you? I told him yes, I'd talk to him if he wanted to come see me. Well, he was then stationed in England, but I said, I'll give him an interview. He called me up from England about the next day, wanted to know if I can come over to an interview. And I told him, sure, come on over, I'll be glad to talk to you. He said, I'll be there in 2 days. He came in 2 days, and we wound up by bringing his family over for pretty shortly and going to work. And he stayed there till he was, stayed with me till he was named as judge a couple of years ago with the Juvenile Domestic Relations Court for the 2 counties. Croxton likewise was a good, smart lawyer, and we formed a partnership and worked for 20 years or so at that. And of course, wished him well when I was a judge, and was supported him as hard as I could for the position. But I still missed him, and was lots of time I wished he was still with me, but things don't work that way. So then that's about how I got what I did. Now, I was Commonwealth Attorney for 14 years, ran 3 terms, and was elected for 3 4-year terms, and was looking forward to turning that work over to somebody else. Well, Robert Alva ran for the job while he was still a student at UVA, but had passed the bar exam, I believe, at that time. And before he could, and got elected, but before he could take office, he got summoned for put in 2 years with the Army, and keeping with some kind of agreement he had with them to let him, and the draft board said, "You better fill your commitment, we'll do something here." So Judge Langford was then on the bench. Judge Langford said to me, said, "You got to stay here 2 more years till Robert gets here." So consequently, I had 14 years as Commonwealth Attorney.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, of course, I was doing the co-op work, and we'd gotten pretty busy because, in addition, to all the necks I told you, we got into Wilsonian Neck, we got into Old Town Neck, Savage's Neck. All of those places had electricity, except Savage's Neck did have electricity as far as the old Wilkins Beach Hotel, but no further. Then we got to the Sherstone area, didn't have electricity, and the areas down the county all didn't have electricity, so that job had gotten to be a pretty fair job, and I thoroughly enjoyed working for them for the whole time I worked with them. Well, then came the Bridge Tunnel project. The Pennsylvania Railroad ran a steamboat service from Norfolk, Old Point, and Cape Charles, and returned. Used to make 2 round trips a day over there. One early in the morning, come back in the morning, go back in the afternoon, and come back at the night. But they suddenly announced they were going to take a service off. That was the old Virginia Ferry Corporation was carrying all the motor vehicles, and at Cape Charles, well, they had moved to Kip Peak by then. The steamboat would carry a few vehicles to Old Point and put them off there, but no trucks, and they had some kind of franchise they were operating on, and they had to get some permits from the county, and the people at Eastern Shore didn't want to lose that steamboat service because it was a convenient way to go to Richmond, go to Old Point, and then go on up and so forth. And they took exceptions to that steamboat taking off the service, and went through court proceedings here at Eastville trying to get them reinstate the service. Judge put quite a fine on them for suspending the service without permission to do so, and the case was appealed to the Supreme Court of Virginia, and the railroad won and said that you couldn't make them run service when they were losing money like you were, and so forth, and relieved them of the fine. Well, that started a group that had been pressing to keep that service going, thinking in terms of bridge tunnel, what we could do. And that started a whole lot of talk and so forth, and I organized a committee to work on that, and that's when they formed what they call the Eastern Shore Civic Service Association, I believe it was, and they asked me would I get a charter for them, and I did, and that's when we got the charter, and they started on, and that's when they employed me as a lawyer. Well, that was a group that had appealed to the case to the Supreme Court. Well, then started talking about a bridge tunnel, and that group still got pushing for that, and in the meantime, the Virginia Ferry Corporation wanted to get out of the ferry business, and it came up for sale, and they got a option to buy it, and then they went out to sell bonds for buy the ferry and their services.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it bought the whole corporation, the whole thing. It had a stream of income in it that gave them enough money to promote a small bond issue to buy the first. I think it was about a $20 million deal.
Wow.
We got that first bond issue, and in the connection with the issue, I believe they added about $250,000 of fees of bonds, or rather could use the proceeds from about $250,000 of the bond issue,
Mm-hmm.
to start studying the bridge tunnel study and so forth. And I guess that was a real stop when they got a little money to work with. Then they wired an engineer, the Swerdup Corporation, and it was some question whether they were going to use Swerdup or whether they were going to use the Quail group out of Baltimore who had built the Annapolis Bay Bridge funnel. And it got to be a rather competitive deal, and finally Swerdup got the majority of the voted commissioners, and that's how they got involved with the St. Louis engineers.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out to be a wonderful move for them, because they could have had a better engineering job than they did have. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it might have been others done just as good, but it couldn't have been better, I don't think. Well, they got the engineering services for a design plan, And then it was a matter of selling the big job bond issue. I think it was a $200 million job bond issue, and it wasn't an easy sale. And we tried hard to get to the market to sell them, and couldn't get any encouragement at all from the marketing people at that time. And finally, I got a little little marketing group in Richmond. Jack Harrison was the leader of the mill, and he coupled up with some big bond people in Boston, New York, and they sold the bond issues, and we were in business then, and set out to build the bridge tunnel and acquire the right-of-ways, highway right-of-ways and so forth, and they had to build the highway up to where it joined with the old ferry right-of-way that went on to the ferry dock. Took 4 years to build the bridge tunnel. They had a consortium of 4 different contractors that took care of various parts of it. One of it did all the underwater island work, and they had to start from just open water, building the 4 islands you see out there. That was a engineering feat. Start with a small stone at the bottom and refill that with sand and put another layer of mid-sized stone on top of that, and finally put the big heavy stone on, as you see when you look over the edge of the island now, to what they have. The tubes were manufactured in Texas, sealed up, welded seals on both 2 ends and towed up to Norfolk, where they went in the yard there and were fitted out before they ever went to attempting to place them. They had to dredge a great big ditch, so to speak, at the bottom of the bay to start those tubes in. They had to have 5 feet of earth on top of the tubes after they got them in place. So they allowed some further dredging if they wanted deeper draft ships coming in the channels. The Baltimore people objected to a bridge over the Baltimore Channel going up to Baltimore as it was originally planned, and to satisfy them, the commission engineers said, we'll just put in 2 tunnels instead of 1 tunnel. So we got one now over the Baltimore Channel and one over the Hampton Roads Channel. That's how that came about. Had to add, I believe 2 more boats. One way, well, I think that they had 4 boats when they bought out from the Virginia Ferry Corporation, and they had to get another boat for running on the Hampton run. Keep yours in Hampton. Well, they bought a old LST Mama, well, number 510, I call it the nickel and dime at Ferry. Number 510. I went to Baltimore to close the sale on that and so forth and take care of the details. And they had a sales tax in Baltimore, but we didn't have a sales tax in Virginia at that time. So instead of taking delivery in Baltimore, where we'd pay the sales tax, we had to deliver it in Norfolk, where we closed on it in Norfolk instead of closing on it mine. Oh, sale, 200,000. I mean 2,000, 2 or 3,000. I don't know the sales tax what it was, but we were doing everything we could to cut the corners. Well, they started out to work on the bridge tunnel, and we observed it from day one, what went on, and remember very well the first trip made to the island, said that is it from one of the islands. The first day it was open for traffic, for a vehicle to run from one side to the other. I had to go to Norfolk, Little Creek rather, to meet with Clyde Morris, manager of the old Enterprise, and he had some legal things we wanted to talk about and so forth. Went over on the ferry that afternoon, got over there ready to come home. It was in the early evening before we got through what we were talking about, 7, 8 o'clock, something like that. He said, "How'd you like to go home by Bridgetown tonight?" I said, "Great, but how am I going to do that?" Well, I said, "They turned the first vehicle through there today that's been through there, and I think his path is clear enough for another vehicle to go through there tonight if you'd like to go." I said, "Sure, I'd like to go." Well, I said, "I'll call up the watchman down there and tell him to let you through," which he did. And I went through there. I think I saw one little light bulb, looked like about a 25 white bulb, from one end to the other burning. There was all kind of construction equipment strewn all around in those tunnels, old piles of lumber here, welding equipment there, and compression things, and generators and whatever they had, but you had to go through there about like a snake going through there. But anyway, it was trails of the cargo, but I tell you, it was a lonesome time down there. But anyway, I got through that the first day. Not the first vehicle, but the first day.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? We thank you very much for all of your thoughts and comments, which are so interesting about the past. And perhaps at some point we can talk about some other things.
I don't know. I don't remember how much else I can talk about.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.